Some Vancouver mental health patients are losing the only home they've known for more than 10 years. The irony is the operators of Hampton Court say they've been told by the local health authority the facility isn't homey enough, that it's outdated and there's a better way to look after the residents. But the patients and their families aren't buying it. Here's Ron Benzie.
It's lunchtime at Hampton Court. Everyone does their part, pitching in to set the table. 12 people live here for now. For some, this has been their home for more than 10 years.
I guess you must obviously have a lot of friends here as well.
Oh, yes. We consider ourselves a family. And
I'm having a wonderful life. Before I didn't have any opportunities. Now I've got about 5 or 6 different things to do every day.
But the residents' daily routine may be in for a dramatic change. The family-run 16-bed facility has been helping people with mental disabilities for more than 30 years. But earlier this year, the owner was issued a notice of closure by the Coastal Health Authority. It says the age of the building is a concern and believes residents lack their own space since they're forced to share their rooms. The agency is now in the process of moving the people who live here to other facilities, which it claims can better look after them.
It's really unfortunate, again, that we have to move them from a place and a site that they know. But in the end, it is really better quality of life that we're trying to provide for these folks.
But residents say their quality of life has never been better. They enjoy it here. This is where they've made lifelong friends, and to them, this is home.
It's been a very successful facility, so we've asked local psychiatrists who deal with the clients on a regular basis, and they say, no, this is exactly the kind of building that the residents need.
This painting is a fish and a boat.
Ruby has been living here for 8 years. She's passionate about her paintings, but also about where she lives. With the pending closure of Hampton Court, she's turned to her MLA, who's promised to help residents with their fight.
There's a group of people here that's like a family, and they're being taken from their home, and that's heartless. There's no support coming and no good rationale coming from the government on this.
Residents know their days together are numbered since Hampton Court is scheduled to shut down in January. They're adamant that they don't want to move and hope the health minister hears their pleas to stay.
I don't want to go anywhere. None of us want to go anywhere. We want to stay at Hampton Court. This is our home.
If they want to shut down this place, they're the mental patients, not me. If I'm having a good time here, a good life, and it's true, then, you should continue.
Been home for several years. This January, Vancouver Coastal Health Authority will stop funding the 16-bed home. And the owners of Hampton Court were told it has nothing to do with quality of care or budget restraints, but rather consumer preference. Hampton Court residents say they were never asked if they wanted to move.
That's the problem. What is going to happen to me if I have to leave? My home of over 11 years.
Very sad. Very sad. You have to leave. This is my home.
Their families.
The residents, as well as their MLA, Gregor Robertson, are calling on the provincial government to step up and save Hampton Court.
I have lived here over 11 years. This is my home, or maybe I should say this is our home.
The Health Ministry wants to relocate residents of Hampton Court to a more updated housing with private rooms, but clients of the 30-year-old family-run facility just don't want to leave. Critics say the impending closure is traumatizing for patients. They say 2 of the residents, including one who was recently transferred, have died since the closure of the home was announced.
Even one of the residents had mentioned to me the other day that, am I going to be next? If they move me, am I going to die? I found this very heartbreaking.
Health Minister George Abbott says Hampton Court no longer meets contract standards for mental health facilities, and he criticizes anyone who suggests the death of a recently moved resident was connected to the transfer. Abbott says it appears the 73-year-old man may have died from a pre-existing chronic medical condition.
Say it was from the stress, but Coastal Health says there was no connection. The government says the house is just too old, there's not enough privacy, and they want to downsize the number of residents in these facilities. Today, some of those residents, along with MLA Gregor Robertson, took their concerns to a Coastal Health meeting, demanding to stay at the home.
How many more are going to be dying before we get this thing settled? I wrote to George Abbott. He did not answer me. No, he assigned it to somebody else to answer me. He said we are outdated. He has never been to Hampton Court. None of you people have ever been to Hampton Court.
The people who have moved, even though that move may have been difficult in the transition, have found where they've moved to be as good, if not better in many cases, to where they are.
The local health authority issued the owner a notice of closure earlier this year, saying the facility is outdated. But for some of its residents, it's the only home they've known for more than a decade. And now we're being told that the shock of having to move is having a drastic impact on the health of those residents.
Richard Lindy has called Hampton House home for the past 11 years. With no living relatives, the people here in this mental health facility have been his family. But now Coastal Health is shutting the house down, saying it's too old, and they now want more intimate homes with fewer residents.
What it was now.
To make matters worse, they are still mourning the death of two friends. Donald died about a month after being forced to move, and after living here for almost 30 years, Beth died shortly after learning she had to leave.
To this day, I don't know how I'm going to ever digest the fact that the residents that have been moved from, the government's decision to close our facility are dying.
There were 16 friends here. It's now down to 9. And it's been hard for this tight-knit group to say goodbye to the ones who relocated.
Will the board agree to halt the movement until it's very clear that there is no connection?
Today, MLA Gregor Robertson and Richard went to a Coastal Health meeting demanding answers, despite the fact that the board says there's no connection to the stress of the move and deaths. One member did make this apologetic admission.
I personally would like to apologize if the grief that you've experienced and the losses that you've experienced, if there has been any relationship at all to the changes that we have made in the housing service within Vancouver community.
Always there to provide one another support, they cheered Richard on when he took to the microphone.
We would like to know why they never came and asked us whether we liked living there, how was our rooms, how did they take care of us, or anything. Thank you.
Pirate?
Back at Hampton, there's talk of their big upcoming Halloween bash, the last one together in the home. Health officials say there's not enough space or privacy, and frankly, new clients didn't want to live in this aging house. But for Richard and his friends, it may be a little rough around the edges, but it's a place they call home.
With the threat of Hampton House closing down, more evidence of the devastating impact on some of its residents. Good evening. Tony is off tonight. The planned closure of a mental health facility in Vancouver has been suddenly put on hold. And with the word that a third resident of that facility has now died, there are calls for a thorough investigation. All 3 deaths have happened since the Coastal Health Authority announced the impending closure of Hampton House. And the people who work there are suggesting some of the residents simply couldn't cope with the disruption to their lives.
You try it, okay? Try it.
It's traditionally one of the happiest days for residents of Hampton Court. They all get to carve their own pumpkin in preparation for the big Halloween bash. They're also making the best of a sad day. They've been given some extra meds to control their emotions as they mourn the suicide of Steve, one of their extended family.
None of us want to move, and I think the pressure might have gotten to him too much.
Steve Orchua made it clear he did not want any part of Vancouver Coastal Health's plan to separate and move the mentally challenged residents to more independent and private accommodations. Steve left his room late Sunday, telling everyone he'd be spending the night with a friend.
And we learned later that he didn't go and see that friend. He, in fact, went to Lionsgate Bridge and ended his life.
The photo albums at Hampton are full of positive memories.
Dad goes, okay, just buy them. He like 6 barrels.
Many of the 16 residents had been here for most of their adult life. Then, after Vancouver Coastal announced plans to move them out to other homes, 2 of the elderly residents died. Beth, who had been here for 25 years, and Donald, who had a heart attack shortly after he was moved from Hampton. The coroner says they died of natural causes. The Hampton residents believe they had broken hearts.
What's required is a coroner's inquest into this third death, into Steve's death, and to examine the links between his death and the move that was imminent for him.
Yeah.
With so much sadness at Hampton Court and now a suicide, the health authority is also calling for an investigation.
We will be carrying out a detailed review of all of the circumstances surrounding this individual's death. And again, we will make decisions about the future of Hampton Court only when we've got all of that information available.
The 2 reviews that are underway, both by the coroner and by Vancouver Coastal Health, will help to provide us with a lot of those answers as to why this tragic death occurred.
3 of their close friends won't be at the party next week, but there is some good news for this close-knit group. The health authority says if and when they're moved to another home, Vancouver Coastal will try and keep all of them together.
Now, CTV News at 6. Your home, your news. Here are Pamela Martin and Bill Good.
Vancouver Coastal Health Authority told operators of the mental health group home last January that funding would be cut off and the residents relocated by January of 2007.
Now, after 3 of the residents died, Coastal Health is re-examining its decision. David Kincaid reports.
We have a dining room in here where they all eat together.
For over 30 years, the Jaworsky family has been providing a home to the mentally ill. This is Hampton Court, an old house in Vancouver that long ago was converted to a group living home, able to accommodate 16 people in a family atmosphere. However, the future of the house and its residents has been up in the air since January of this year.
A nasty lady came on January 31st and told us that we had to be out by January 31st of 2007.
Hampton Court has been Richard Lindy's home for over 11 years. The closure announcement hit Richard and other residents hard, some harder than others.
My good friend, Steve, he killed himself, and because the stress has gotten to us so much.
Richard is referring to his friend and roommate, Steve Oraquia. He jumped to his death from the Lionsgate Bridge on October 23rd. While the residents of Hampton Court grieve the death of a friend, the Vancouver Coastal Health Association has launched a critical incident review of the situation.
This is Terry's room here.
While the review is underway, the decision to move the residents is on hold. The last 11 months have been frustrating for the operators of Hampton Court. Satisfactory answers to direct questions have been hard to come by.
They sort of jumped around from reason to reason, and they didn't give us a definitive answer.
A question we put to the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority.
The reasons behind Coastal Health's decision to close Hampton Court.
A key point being that residents would have a lot more privacy, so individual bedrooms as opposed to shared bedrooms, which exist at Hampton Court.
The Hampton Court review will look at all the available options.
There is the possibility when we get to the end of that review process of a number of options, one of which is Hampton Court staying open.
Good news for the residents of Hampton Court, but after 11 months of uncertainty, Richard Lindy sees a simpler solution.
Stop bothering us. This is our home. We do not want to move.
David Kincaid, CTV News, Vancouver.
And technicians. It says the shortages are partly the result of changing demographics. The other problem is many professionals are leaving the system and not enough are being attracted to it.
This has been an issue over more than the last decade. There's been a lot of lip service given to it. There's recognition for
it stay open. Hampton Court has been slated for closure by the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority since last year. It's operated as a home for mentally ill patients for decades, but the health authority wants to move its residents to other accommodations. Well, a report commissioned by Vancouver Coastal recommends it consider keeping the facility open. The health authority is only willing to fund 8 beds, not the full 16 that it's currently licensed for.
They've given us an offer, but with a catch. Essentially what they're doing, they're going to starve the resources
and force the facility to shut. So in turn, it's prolonging the closure, the planned closure of Hampton Court.
As we reported at the time, 3 of the facility's residents had died after hearing of the impending closure, and the Coastal Health Authority then ordered an independent review. Tonight, the results of that review are in, and despite a recommendation to keep the facility open, it may still be forced to shut down after all.
A couple of residents head out, excited to learn that today they're heading to North Vancouver's Cleveland Dam. It's field trip day at Hampton Court. The outings provide the people who live here a brief escape from all the anxiety since learning last year their home may be shut down.
It's torn us apart. Absolutely. The residents are stressed to the hilt. We've had 3 residents that have died. This was shortly after the announcement of the planned closure.
The Vancouver Coastal Health Authority first announced in January of 2006 that Hampton Court was to shut down, its residents to be transferred to other facilities that it felt could better look after them. But the transfer was halted after the deaths of 3 residents, one by suicide. The Health Authority commissioned a report to determine the viability of keeping the 16-bed facility open. And while the report released yesterday recommends that Vancouver Coastal reconsider keeping Hampton Court open, the Health Authority is only willing to fund half the number of beds, not the full 16 that is currently licensed for.
They're unprofessional coming into our facility and announcing to our residents that are very fragile at this time, let alone mentally ill, and telling them, hey, you can keep your home open, but oh, there's not enough funding, so essentially your facility is going to shut down anyway.
We believe the offer that we've made to Hampton Court is extremely fair, and it was based on thorough research of existing contracts with other 8 and 9 bed mental health housing providers in Vancouver, both not-for-profit and private, who are, making, for all intents and purposes, very successful businesses out of that.
To remain open, Vancouver Coastal is asking the owners of Hampton Court to renovate and upgrade the training of staff. As well, there would be no new residents moving in. Critics say when housing for the mentally ill is so scarce, especially on Vancouver's west side, shutting down beds doesn't make any sense.
I think this is all about money. They've denied that from the beginning. They think they can turn everything into one generic system, but that doesn't work for everybody.
Patients at a mental health facility in Vancouver are breathing a sigh of relief tonight now that their home has been saved. The Hampton Court facility had been slated to shut down last fall. But when 3 residents died after hearing that news, the closure was put on hold. Tonight, it's been called off altogether. But as Ron Benzie reports, that doesn't mean it's been saved indefinitely.
B5, at the sound of the tone, B5.
I got that.
A handful of residents enjoy an afternoon game of bingo. It's a good indication that life is returning to normal after the mental health care facility faced the prospect of being shut down. But the 8 residents who live here are thrilled to learn that they've won a reprieve. They won't have to move out after all.
I-19.
I am very happy that this is being able to stay home. This is my home and my family. I love the people that run this place.
I'm very happy because they allow 8 of us to continue to stay, and I'm very happy. I think they are very fair.
The Vancouver Coastal Health Authority first announced in January 2006 that Hampton Court was to shut down, claiming residents would be better off living on their own. But soon after the transfer had begun, the shutdown was halted following the deaths of 3 residents, one by suicide.
We would like to know why they never came and asked us whether we liked living there, how was our rooms, how did they take care of us, or anything.
Following a review and months of negotiations and lobbying, the Health Authority has agreed to keep the 16-bed facility open.
We recognized, once we were going down this path with Hampton Court, that there are some unique factors that came into play for this group of residents, which made it important to step back and do that review process and say, hey, is it the right thing for this group of people?
But the operator calls the deal bittersweet. It's been ordered to undergo extensive renovations to accommodate separate sleeping arrangements, no more double bunking, and no new residents will be allowed to move in above the 8 already there, meaning staff layoffs and program cuts.
The residents need to understand that there's no victory. We haven't won. And we're put in a position where the facility is only at a point where it's going to close eventually. It's an extended closure over a long period of time.
They stood up for their rights. They stood up for the rights of people dealing with mental illnesses around the province, and hopefully that message is being sent very clearly that these people need good homes, and they're going to fight to keep them when they have them.
The residents of Hampton Court say the future is no longer something to fear, adding today they all feel like winners.
I don't, bingo!
It's a bingo.